Should you buy a home with all of the built-in expenses that go along with it, or should you simply rent your entire life? In today's video, we're going to listen to two financial gurus who have entirely different opinions on the matter. Let's listen to what they both have to say, and at the end, I'll render my own verdict. Let's begin with Peter Schiff. In this clip, he's on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast and is asked by Grant Stephan who exactly should be buying a home.
Who should buy a home today?
Well, I mean, it depends on your circumstances and where the home is located. But for a lot of people, and this has been the case for a long time, renting is a better option. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing that the government has done, too, to push people into home ownership, which has helped screw up the market, is the tax consequences. The government gives you a tax write-off. If you buy a home, you can deduct your mortgage interest, but you can't deduct your rent if you rent a home. I mean, sometimes there's a renter's credit. Some local governments give that, but there's much bigger government subsidies for buying a home rather than renting. And so that's caused people who might otherwise have been better off renting to buy instead, because they're taking into account the tax benefits. But in the real economy, they should be renting. But in the economy created by government, they end up buying. But that distorts the market, and it leads to a less optimal decision because it's all based on taxation. A lot of people don't itemize their deductions now. They take a standard deduction. And so it doesn't matter that the mortgage interest is tax deductible. They don't get the deduction. Depending on, again, your circumstances, a lot of people are better off renting.
Okay, so here Peter Schiff is making a good point. One of the perceived benefits of home ownership is the tax deductibility of your mortgage interest. The problem is most people aren't even taking advantage of that tax deductible interest because they're taking the standard deduction. So one of the huge perceived advantages of owning a home actually never comes into play. Let's keep listening.
A lot of people who own homes, the only reason they're better off staying where they are is because their mortgage rate is so low. Their mortgage rate may be so low that if they sold their home and rented, their rent would be higher than what their current mortgage is. Now, they are stuck with maintenance, insurance, taxes. All these costs are going up. So it's not like the cost of home ownership isn't rising with inflation. It is, making it even harder for people to buy a home today, because not only do you have to pay these inflated prices and then borrow at 7-8%, but you have to pay insurance costs that have basically doubled over the last few years. You have to pay much higher maintenance costs. You have to pay higher local property taxes. I mean, everything related to buying a home is a lot more expensive. And of course, if you don't buy a home, if you rent, rents have gone way up and there's no end in sight. They're going to keep on rising.
So this is an important point. One of the perceived benefits of home ownership is that your mortgage payment stays level over your lifetime, assuming you actually stick with the home for the full 30-year mortgage, though most people don't. But even if you did, you have other expenses that are going up over the life of that mortgage. And these are expenses the renter might not necessarily have to assume. Let's keep going.
Well, I think for a lot of people, though, that's their only means of saving. Is that when you look
really
back,
saving.
like, it's a forced savings account.
No, it's not.
For people who are bad with money.
A house depletes your savings. It's a money pit. Houses are expensive. How much money I spend on this house, how much money I spend on my Connecticut house. It's crazy the amount of money that a house costs you. Now, people get bailed out because they think, the house appreciates. Not always. It's inflation, really. I mean, that's doing it. And all that's happening is the land is keeping pace. But houses don't. I mean, even if somebody tells you, here's this house that I sold for $1 million and I bought it, 10, 20 years ago for $500,000. If you think about all the money they put into that house over that period of time, they may not have made any money. A lot of the houses, too, that were bought back then, if you don't redo the kitchens, redo the bathroom, put on a new roof, your audio-visual systems are all obsolete, the wiring. I mean, a lot of stuff has to be brought up to date in order to sell it for the $1 million. A lot of money was spent. I mean, a lot of these houses, too, if they weren't updated over the years, they're considered a tear down. What does that mean? A tear down, people say, my house, a tear down means a house that was once brand new and had a lot of value, now has zero value. It's going to be torn down. The only thing that has value is the land itself. The house is worthless.
So once again, houses can be money pits. You may think you're getting ahead through the home's appreciation, but a lot of those gains can be offset by the cost of maintenance or even upgrades or renovations when it comes time to sell the house. Let's keep going.
If you're so reckless and like the only way I'm going to save is if I have a mortgage I have to pay down. But, you could take the money. I used to tell people during the housing bubble days, look, just, if you can rent for cheaper, then rent and take all the money you save and invest it. Open up a brokerage account, invest the money. Don't just spend it out. Don't just, buy a fancier car or take more vacations with the money you save by renting. Invest that money, right, in an actual investment.
So according to Schiff, you may be better off simply renting and then taking all the money you would have otherwise spent on home upkeep and improvements and investing that in the stock market. And even though you wouldn't have a paid off house in retirement and may even be faced with the prospect of an increasing rent payment at that point, you'll be so much further ahead for having invested the difference in the stock market along the way. All right, let's turn to Dave Ramsey. In this clip, a 30-year-old calls in and explains how easy things seem to be going by not owning a home and simply renting. She's wondering if this is a good long-term plan.
Every single year from 30 to 70, your rent's going to go up. Or your landlord's asleep at the wheel. They will die, and the next person will jack it through the roof to make up the difference. But the value of the rent goes up every single year from age 30 to age 70. Your most expensive line item in your budget is housing. So the most expensive line item in your budget is out of your control, variable, and increasing. That is not scalable. That's not sustainable long term. Again, like Rachel said, if you want to do it for 4 or 5 years, I think you got a good gig. Go ahead and do it for 4 or 5 years. But let's not translate that to, is it okay to rent forever? Well, it's okay, but it's going to kill you. Because what you're paying in rent now is nothing compared to what it'll be 40 years from now. I think we can all agree with that. And so when you buy, if you buy on a fixed rate 15-year, you now have a fixed payment for a property. It doesn't have to have a lawn. It can be a condo. You have a fixed rate. And then when you get paid off, you have a fixed rate, which is zero, other than your taxes and your property insurance, right? Those are two things that will go up as well, but they're a small, much smaller percentage, and they don't end up being the largest thing in your budget anymore, usually. So,
and I will say this too, Jenny, that it doesn't have to be a single family home. If you are single, you don't need a lot of room. It could be a condo, right? But owning property that you eventually own full out is what the key is. Yeah. That's the goal.
I don't want you to confuse the fact that you've got a really good situation right now, and I endorse you staying there, with a forever plan. It's not a good forever plan. It's a really good short-term plan, though. I would sit there and I wouldn't let your friends shame you into buying something. And that's what's happening. And people are going, you got to buy a house, you got to buy a house. And you don't have to buy a house right now. You not got a bad deal. But you do need to stabilize the most expensive line item in your budget before it gets out of control and starts messing up your life. I mean, can you imagine being 70 years old and broke and your rent goes up every year?
All right, so here Ramsey makes the case that while renting may be a good alternative in the short term, owning is much better over the long haul. Why? 2 real reasons. First, your mortgage payment stays level over the arc of your amortization schedule, and you want to have your house paid off by the time you retire because that's the single largest payment you'll have in retirement. Why not eliminate it while you can? Okay, now that we've heard both sides, let me weigh in with my own thoughts on this subject. Being a homeowner myself, I have to tell you that I've seen firsthand the absolute money pit that homeownership can be. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that I'd be light years ahead had I simply rented a home to this point in my life. Owning a home is way more expensive than you ever thought it could be, and most of that extra expense comes from costs you would have never anticipated at the outset. Had I simply rented and invested the difference, I'd be much wealthier than I am today. And I have absolutely no motivation to pay off my home because I'm confident I can do way better by simply investing those prepayments into the stock market over time. And while I will still potentially have a home payment in retirement, I'd rather have a much higher balance in my stock market savings with which to pay that mortgage payment in retirement. So the math far favors the renter in terms of wealth accumulated over time. But at the end of the day, it's not all about math. Sometimes people just want to live in something they own, even if there's a huge cost that goes along with it. And you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach. Folks, my upcoming book, The Guru Gap, How America's Financial Gurus Are Leading You Astray and How to Get Back on Track, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Take the opportunity to order your copy today. Also, in the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 1 million Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to davemcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to powerzero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.